DeSantis, though, is trying his best right now in terms of his attacks against Donald Trump. One of the ones he's really pursuing is kind of a Ted Cruz strategy. Don't forget, Ted Cruz did come in second in the GOP primary in 2016. DeSantis is effectively running to Trump's from the right, saying that Trump is not a true conservative. He's not with the real movement. DeSantis actually just came out in a new interview with an evangelical channel to call out Trump on the issue of abortion. Here's what he had to say.
Right to life. We were able to deliver the heartbeat bill, which was a big deal. And, while I appreciate what the former president has done in a variety of realms, he opposes that bill. He said it was, quote, harsh to protect an unborn child when there's a detectable heartbeat. I think that's humane to do. I think pro-lifers have been wanting to see, good pro-life protections, whether it's Florida or Iowa under Kim Reynolds. Very important that you're able to get this stuff done.
You mentioned abortion. Do you feel the former president's going soft then on abortion a little bit, especially in this area that you mentioned earlier?
Well, I think so. I mean, I was really surprised because he's a Florida resident. And I thought he would compliment the fact that we were able to do the heartbeat bill, which pro-lifers have wanted for a long time. He never complimented, never said anything about it. Then he was asked about it, and he said it was, quote, harsh. But, these are children with detectable heartbeats. And I think to do that was very humane. And I think it was something that every pro-lifer appreciates that we were able to get that done.
So what do we take away from that? How many times did he say the word pro-lifer over and over again, trying to identify himself with the pro-life movement? Smart play, actually, because they're so active in the GOP primary, but specifically in the state called Iowa. And that's also why he kept noting that's the same bill that they have in Iowa. Governor Kim Reynolds, the Iowa governor. He's betting the house on Iowa. David Brody, the interviewer there from CBN, was actually an interesting figure because he's evangelical media, but he's also kind of a Trump booster. So for him to give airing to DeSantis on this issue of abortion, specifically targeted to the most evangelicals who would watch his channel and who consume that content, I do see that as significant, at least at the pro-lifers seeing some sort of betrayal by Trump. Now, at the same time, Trump is on the right side of majority public opinion, but not necessarily even GOP primary public opinion. So I would say this is probably the only real, what would I say? Like the only vulnerability that Trump may have. And I'm only going to say may, because at the same time, he still has the ultimate Trump card. What can he say? I'm the one who got it done.
Yeah.
You would never have Roe versus Wade destroyed without me, which, if you look at the polls and who evangelicals are supporting, the majority of them still support Trump in the primary.
Yeah, and it also, because it has been made so clear that positions like the one Ron DeSantis has staked out with the heartbeat bill, that they are wildly unpopular with the general electorate, it also eats into his electability case.
Yes, it's true.
Which is part of why you see Republican voters, I mean, Ron DeSantis' strongest pitch is like, Trump without the chaos and I'm the guy that can beat Biden. Republican voters don't actually see it that way. A majority of them still think Donald Trump is their most effective candidate to attempt to win back the White House. So it's not working out well in that regard. And then the other thing that I found really noteworthy that we covered on last week or the week before is some of DeSantis' own internal polling that was leaked showed that, yes, voters do actually, they've taken in the messaging that he is very conservative, that he is more conservative than Trump. But guess what? Even voters that self-identify as very conservative, the majority of them are going for Trump. So even though he's staked out the ideological ground, which is a hit to his electability, even though people have taken this in like, okay, yes, we see what you're doing. We see that you are to the right of Trump. Doesn't matter, because ultimately the very conservative voters, they're willing to give Trump a pass on this issue and a variety of other issues and still stick by his side, even though they feel like ideologically maybe DeSantis is more aligned. Voters just don't frequently vote with like a checklist of like, let me go through issue by issue and see which candidate is closer to my position. It's a much more complex process that has a lot more to do with vibes and do I like the affect of this person? Do I get the sense they're a fighter? Do I get a sense they're going to fight for me? Then it is this sort of like issue by issue checklist that a lot of politicians, DeSantis included, sort of approach it as.
Right. DeSantis is prosecuting like a conservative policy case. Let's put the next one up there on the screen, please, because it's important as well. You can see he says, quote, "We must repeal the jailbreak bill that allowed this to happen." He was linking to a Fox News article saying that a terrorist financier released under the First Step Act says that he would be proud to fund terrorists again. So this is a part of a new case that I've been seeing bubbling up against Trump. Ryan Girdusky actually in our panel brought this up in terms of Trump's major, accomplishments. Was one, a major tax cut for the rich. Two was the First Step Act, the criminal justice reform. What's interesting to me, Krystal, is how much they are calling it and messaging on using this by tying it actually to a rising crime wave, which of course GOP voters are very upset about, and are, well, not just GOP voters, but I could say more animated about. Talking specifically about the criminal justice reform and actually tying Trump to the issue. The problem actually for Trump is that he himself has refused to defend the law. In the past, anytime he's been asked about it, he said, oh, I did that for Jared, because that was part of Jared Kushner's big push in the White House. Jared Kushner teamed up with Tim Scott to go up against that. Interestingly to me also is that DeSantis can run against both Tim Scott, who something we haven't noted is that while he doesn't have a large amount of support in the current polls right now, he has a very high favorability rating for Republican politicians. Amongst the GOP base, he's actually the only politician other than Trump with an overall positive trend. It's DeSantis, Trump, and Tim Scott. So it's a smart play to be able to go against the only other two people in the race who have a high favorability rating over like 45%.
Yeah, and Tim Scott is kind of hard to hit because he does have that
nice guy.
likability factor.
Right.
Apparently he's well liked with his, I mean, listen, ideologically, I'm obviously like in a very different place than him. But voters really like him in South Carolina. His colleagues really like him in the Senate. And I did think it was interesting. I took note of the fact that when we interviewed, her name was what, Shelby Talcott.
Yeah.
She is very in touch with, a lot of the Republican aides and advisors and campaign operatives and whatever. And at least what the Trump people were telling her, whether this is what they accurately believe or not, was that they had their eye on Tim Scott as a potential threat as well. And so, yeah, it makes sense for DeSantis to be sort of taking shots both at Trump and Tim Scott here just to make sure that he remains the top contender should Trump fall. Control Room, I wonder if we could put the Ron DeSantis word cloud up. That would be A7B, because I think it also speaks to some of the issues that he could have in terms of electability, which again is like really the core case here. Yes, he's positioning himself to the right of Trump in terms of the Republican base, but really the pitch is, I am a winner, I can win, look at the scoreboard, right? He famously said. So the views of DeSantis amongst all voters, not a pretty picture here in terms of if you think this is your electability guy. Number one is unsure. Okay, well, that's maybe hopeful because you can fill in the blanks for people and maybe you can portray a positive message there. But some of the other ones that are top are fascist, idiot, racist, terrible, evil, dangerous. I like the one that just says nah. N-A, just like nah. So listen, however you feel about Ron DeSantis, whether you think that these adjectives are accurate or the way that you would describe him, it certainly paints a picture of someone who is not a lock for the presidency, not a lock to be more electable than Donald Trump. And that's the way the Republican voters view it. They're not confident that he actually would be a stronger general election candidate. So to the extent that that's something that they're weighing in their voting, which I've always been skeptical that that would be the top priority for the Republican base, but to the extent that this is something that people are really looking at and care about, the case is far from clear-cut that Ron DeSantis is the guy.
Absolutely. I think he's got more vulnerabilities, certainly, than people let on. He's not, the golden ticket, I think, to election. I do still think he would be a stronger candidate just because Trump does have so much baggage. But it's important to look at all of them, on the merits and just see, like, what the real case and the tests would look like.
Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.